By now, most people have probably seen Spider-Man Brand New Day, so in this video, let's discuss both the highs and the lows of Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies, from Spider-Man Homecoming all the way to Brand New Day. And of course, we'll start off with Homecoming, a movie that I really liked when it released during the summer of 2017, and as time has gone on, I still like it. I want to begin the video on a positive note, so let's talk about the biggest high Homecoming has to offer: Michael Keaton as Vulture. There's no question Keaton is a huge reason why Homecoming remains an enjoyable watch. Through all of the storied history, Keaton's Vulture stays nearly atop the MCU's 5 best villains. The way I see it, he was meant to be part of a Spider-Man film. In every single frame Keaton's in, he's a show stealer. But it's not just the performance that's great, it's the character. He's not a mustache-twirling villain. He's an average guy trying to make ends meet for his family. And unfortunately, the route he chooses to make that possible is through crime. Later on, crossing paths with Peter in what became one of the MCU's best reveals. So Vulture is my favorite part of Homecoming, but I also like the high school stuff. Flash is kind of funny. I don't mind Ned. However, another high I'd like to point out is Peter's character development. It might not be as good compared to what we saw in Tobey Maguire's or Andrew Garfield's movies. Regardless, I do like the growth Peter goes through in Homecoming, learning that he's more than just a suit, and it all comes together during the rubble scene. Between that and the scene with Peter and Vulture in the car, I'd say these are the 2 best scenes of Homecoming for sure. So those are Homecoming's highs. What are the lows? The first thing that pops in my head is the visual effects and green screen. They don't hold up well in 2026. I mean, they barely held up in 2017. All in all, the action sequences don't look particularly good. They're loaded with CGI, Peter's suit is all digital. Simply put, it looks bad. And most notably in the scene where Tony takes Peter's suit, the green screen and even the lighting is abysmal. There isn't an ounce of practicality in scenes like this. I hated how little they used practical effects in Homecoming. That was pretty much the case for all 3 Tom Holland Spider-Man movies before Brand New Day. Luckily, they fixed things, but those 3 movies in particular do not look good. I also don't like how Homecoming feels more like an MCU movie and less like a Spider-Man movie. The reason Vulture is upset and angry is thanks to Tony Stark. It doesn't have much to do with Spider-Man at all. Again, this is more of an overarching problem with Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies. They try to jam-pack MCU stuff so they can build towards other movies and forget to include classic Spider-Man characters like Uncle Ben, Harry, Dr. Connors for instance, etc, etc. Anyway, on to Far From Home. Similar to Homecoming, I too really liked Far From Home when it released summer 2019. But unlike Homecoming, I actually think Far From Home is not good at all. I hate to be this guy, but I must discuss lows first when talking about Spider-Man Far From Home. The movie is literally one giant low. Let's get this over with. We'll combine all the lows. So the film begins with a joke for some reason. Keep in mind, Far From Home was the first movie after Endgame, and you decided to follow that up with a joke? As a matter of fact, the whole movie is a meme. The jokes are non-stop. I feel like they made this movie for kids and teenagers. It's almost as bad as Thor: Love and Thunder. Next, it's revealed Peter randomly is into MJ now? When did that happen? What kind of chemistry did they have that hinted they'd be lovers by the time the sequel came around? In Homecoming, MJ is a weirdo, and Peter looks at her like she is a weirdo. I want to know where the change happened. What led to Peter falling for MJ in between Homecoming and Far From Home? And don't even get me started on the multiverse stuff. Far From Home was the movie that introduced the possibility of the multiverse. Not that it's Far From Home's fault that the multiverse ended up being a massive flop, but it's funny looking back at this movie and hearing them discuss the multiverse, only to know years later that it was a complete disaster. Then it gets into dumb territory once Peter is given Tony Stark's glasses. Number one, why would Tony Stark leave a weapons defense system to a teenager? I mean, did Tony Stark never once think through that Peter, being a dumb teenager, would mistakenly use this weapons defense system against somebody like, oh, I don't know, the guy in this movie who also has a crush on MJ? Secondly, how were these glasses left to Peter when he was dead at the end of Infinity War? And after 5 years, the only time these two would see each other again was for a few minutes on the battlefield at the end of Endgame. And then the real kicker is Peter, again being the dumb teenager he is, decides to gift the glasses over to a complete stranger in Mysterio. I know. He felt like he could trust him, but still, you barely know the guy. It doesn't make any sense. And how do the glasses not detect who Beck is? He's a former employee of Tony Stark, who, by the way, didn't change his name. Moving on from that mess now, there's a few other things I want to touch on that I don't like about Far From Home, and one of them is how it's a rinse and repeat of Homecoming. Peter is supposed to have learned his lesson after Homecoming, yet he makes another dumb mistake, and here we are again. He has to go through the motions. It's dumb too how Peter figures out Beck has been lying to him this whole time. There is a projector from their previous fight against this fire monster left in the middle of a street, and out of the 1.4 million people who live in Prague, the one person to find this projector is MJ. How convenient is that? I remember back in 2019, people were praising the Mysterio scenes as well, but in my opinion, they've always looked like a CGI mess. They're less than impressive. The one high I do want to talk about, though, is Jake Gyllenhaal. Surprise, surprise. He's good as Mysterio, very entertaining, despite the character being quite crappy. After all, his motivation again has to do with Tony Stark, not Spider-Man, and he doesn't even have powers, yet Jake Gyllenhaal makes the most of it. He goes all out psycho. I wish he was in more MCU movies. So I really enjoyed his performance. It's the only saving grace Far From Home has. Real quick, if you're enjoying yourself, make sure to subscribe for more movie content. Alright, No Way Home is next. To this day, people really seem to love No Way Home, because when I made my ranking of Tom Holland's movies, I got some serious hate for ranking No Way Home in third. Personally, since the day No Way Home was released, I thought it was overrated. And this is coming from someone who is a huge fan of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy, and I even like Andrew Garfield's movies. The Tobey Maguire movies in particular, though, are some of my favorite films of all time. In fact, they are my favorite superhero movies ever made, especially 1 and 2. With that being said, I'll start with a low again. From the very beginning, I find it so odd that Peter Parker is considered the most famous person in the world in No Way Home. Why would this be? It makes sense if he alone was the only superhero in the universe. But he lives in a world where Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Hawkeye, and a million other superheroes exist. Why would his identity getting revealed automatically make him the most famous person in the world over the people just mentioned? You're just taking a guy's mask off and saying this is who it is, and if anything, people would say, who the hell is Peter Parker? Enough about that though. The most obvious high of No Way Home is the return of Willem Dafoe, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield. These three knock it out of the park. I remember when I saw this movie in theaters, I went crazy for Andrew and Tobey. Looking back, the scene in which they return was not exactly the best. In fact, it's kind of crappy, but I do like them here. And Willem Dafoe is just sensational. All of that stuff is great. This was the peak of the multiverse, and they never even came close to hitting that peak again. Another high I like to point out is Aunt May's death. That probably had a lot to do with Tom Holland's performance. He's excellent in the scene. I'd say maybe the best overall scene in No Way Home. Now, quickly going back to lows, the dialogue left a lot to be desired. It's pretty one-dimensional. What stands out most is Sandman's dialogue. I know we couldn't film his scenes on set, but still, that was the best voiceover dialogue they could have given him? Come on. Not to mention Zendaya is total cringe in this. Lastly, the rewatchability is not not there in my eyes. Yes, it is fun to come back to No Way Home after a few years to see Andrew, Toby, Willem, and so on in the MCU again, but like, they're what makes the movie. I honestly don't care about a majority of Tom Holland's Spider-Man's plot. I truly wish they focused solely on the original characters. If Tom Holland and Zendaya weren't in No Way Home, I wouldn't care. I cared way more about seeing our original characters from Garfield's and Maguire's movies overseeing Tom Holland's characters from his universe. Did I even mention Doctor Strange is in No Way Home? Who cares? Finally, Brand New Day, what everyone is calling the best Tom Holland Spider-Man movie so far. And I think I have to agree. What makes this movie so good? Well, there's a handful of things, but the first thing I want to point out is the visual effects. This film looks absolutely incredible for a superhero movie. It blows the other three Holland films out of the water. It really helps they filmed in real locations this time, so that horrendous green screen is gone for the most part. And they used a ton of practical effects, which is big. Thankfully too, Spidey's suit is real and not CGI. And the fight choreography was amazing, all thanks to Jackie Chan's team. The overall aesthetic in Brand New Day is unlike anything we've seen before in an MCU movie. I loved it. The next high I want to discuss is the inclusion of the Punisher and Hulk. Going in, I'll admit, I was hesitant about involving these characters. I said to myself, really? We're really going to include other MCU characters again in a Spider-Man movie? But guys, it totally works. Jon Bernthal's Punisher is fantastic in this. Everyone's been talking about his chemistry with Tom Holland, and I gotta say, these two are amazing together on screen. As for Ruffalo's Hulk, it makes sense why he's in this. And we actually get the real Hulk back, which was a bonus. I would have been livid if Smart Hulk returned in Brand New Day. We needed old Hulk back. Lastly for highs, this is the best MJ and Ned have been in the MCU so far. I like the story of Spider-Man being depressed away from his girlfriend and best friend. Similar to Thunderbolts, they lean into a lot of the sadness stuff which could relate to all of us. And I thought Peter's chemistry with both MJ and Ned was better here than the previous movies. I cared about the three of them. I wanted them all back together. Their dialogue felt real and authentic. That made for some pretty emotional stuff in Brand New Day. But I do have a relatively bigger low. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm sure almost every person who's ever seen a Spider-Man movie before has now seen Spider-Man Brand New Day, so I feel comfortable talking about the biggest spoiler in Spider-Man Brand New Day. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you might want to go watch it first and click away from this video, come back later. Anyway, now that we're here, the biggest spoiler in Brand New Day is the reveal of Jean Grey, played by Sadie Sink, and in my opinion, she doesn't work as the villain in Brand New Day. I'm not a fan of her inclusion. First off, it's kind of weird Marvel chose to keep this a secret from the public for the longest time. And even weirder how it's kept a secret for half the movie, when a ton of people going in already knew who Sadie Sink was playing. You know how there's like 3 or 4 scenes where Jean Grey is toying with Peter, but Peter has no idea who it is that's messing with him? They keep it a secret up until like the midway point. Well, on rewatch, I feel like those scenes are going to feel a lot less impactful and more like a chore to rewatch. And it might feel repetitive to the viewer that they keep teasing you with this villain reveal. When on rewatch, you know it's Jean Grey. I don't like either how Jean Grey sort of takes away from Peter's portion of the story. This whole film, we're going through so much with Peter. He misses his girlfriend, his best friend, his aunt. This man is depressed. But then, as the movie's getting really good and we're on the verge of tearing up, they decide to yank Peter from the biggest scene of the film and implement Jean Grey instead. And I also found it weird how they basically copied Thunderbolt's ending. Why did you have to do that? We all know too, Jean Grey is only in Spider-Man Brand New Day because Marvel knows they screwed up. She's shoehorned in here as a last resort because time is starting to run out. We're almost at Doomsday. Marvel for some reason decided to waste so much time on random movies like Thor Love and Thunder rather than introducing the X-Men far earlier in the universe. So voila, they knew they needed the X-Men very soon, and that's why she's here. Sadie Sink does give a great performance though. I will say that it's not her fault. Marvel messed this whole thing up. She should have been introduced years ago, but what can you do? So those are all the highs and lows, in my opinion, of Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies, from Homecoming to Brand New Day. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with my highs and lows? And is there anything I missed mentioning in this video? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments.